Hi, everybody, and welcome. We are so excited today for Season 2, Episode 2 of the Lefora Talk Show. And we have Michael joining us. Hi, Michael. Welcome.
Good morning.
And also Miss Jean. Hi, Miss Jean. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Miss Tanya. I'm good.
Nice to see you. And we're also going to have Rommel, who's going to be joining us in a minute. So we are really excited to get started. My name is Tanya Friedman, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Kinetics USA. And every month we bring you the Lefora Talk Show. We have two new guests, Michael, who's going to be sharing his journey with us, and Rommel, who's going to be joining us shortly. And then, of course, Miss Jean, the famous Miss Jean, who is very well known on Lefora. And shout out to the Lefora admin team for giving us this opportunity, because I think it's really important for nurses to help other nurses that are coming to the US. So before we get started, the purpose of the Lefora Talk Show is really just that, nurses helping other nurses, those that are in the US already, sharing their journey and their experience. And there we have Rommel joining us. Hi, Rommel. Hi. Welcome. So we're just talking about why we're doing the Lefora Talk Show. For those of you who are in the US already, you will know that there is a lot of advice and a lot of tips and pointers that you want to share with those that have not yet arrived here. And that's really what this is all about. So we're really excited to hear Rommel and Michael's journey. And of course, Miss Jean is going to be chiming in all the time as well. The Lefora Talk Show is an hour. So please stay on, because we're going to be sharing Rommel's journey. We're going to be sharing Michael's journey, and we're going to be talking about a lot of things about their journey of getting to the US, about what it was like in the hospitals when they first arrived, cool technology in the US. They're going to be talking about what it's like to come on your own or what it's like to bring a family. They're going to be talking about the states where they are currently located. Many people don't realize how different the different states are. So stay on for the full hour and watch all of that information. And they're also going to be talking about COVID, what the situation is like right now in the states where they are located. So we've got a lot to look forward to. The one thing that we have asked the guests is not to share anything specific about the specific hospitals that they're working or the organizations they're working with, as well as the agencies. This is neutral. This is not, talking about any specific hospital or agency or anything like that. And also we ask all of you who are watching, please put your questions into the chat. Please don't direct message our guests and overwhelm them. We need to be respectful, and please put your questions into the chat, and I will be happy to ask your questions. And we want this to be interactive. So please put into the chat if you're watching, what your name is and where you are in the world, and if you have any questions. Okay. So with that said, let's get started. Okay. So Rommel and Michael, if you want to maybe start off and just each of you tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from in the Philippines, and your background as a nurse, and maybe tell us a little bit up to the part where before you got to the US, what was your journey? Who would like to go first?
I can go.
Okay, go Rommel.
Hi, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are in the world today. I previously worked in a pharmaceutical company before moving into the US. My course actually in college is Bachelor's in Science in Physical Therapy, but having worked in a pharmaceutical company, I have medical doctor friends who invited me to take up nursing. The main reason being is that I really wanted to go to the US as a physical therapist, but at that time in 2000, I graduated in 2001. At that time, the physical therapist from the Philippines is actually barred there was a big hoopla in one of the result of the certification board in the Philippines, and we are banned to go to the US. All of the clinics, we were told in the Philippines that all of the clinics and hospitals in the US has this memo in their board saying they're not accepting Filipino physical therapists. So the only option for me to go to the US is to take up another science course that is in demand in the US, which is nursing. And fortunately, at that time, where my medical doctor friends invited me to take up nursing, they were offering a fast track nursing course for physical therapies, dentists, OTs, and doctors for a 2-year, 1 summer fast track course. And then you can take the exam as an RN in the Philippines, and eventually you can take the boards in the US. So that's what I did. So I took the opportunity. I took up the fast track course nursing, and that was history. So, but luckily for me as well, my doctor friends really pursued me in doing the school thing, because I was working back then in a pharmaceutical company. So I gave it my all. On top of me working in a pharmaceutical company, I have to finish everything. So we do classes at night. I don't have weekends because I was at school on weekends. And I have, of course, to spend hours for my clinicals. So, and then eventually, after we graduated from that fast track course, I have to take up all of the exams. So that was my actual background before me moving to the US.
Wow. Well, you definitely had your goal in mind, Rommel. You knew what you were wanting to do. You wanted to come to the US, and you were going to do it no matter what.
True.
So and that, I know a lot of nurses who are watching feel the same, because, you know, a lot of nurses took up nursing for that exact reason. Michael, tell us a little bit about your background.
My name is Michael Ray. I graduated nursing in 2008 in Cagayan de Oro, but I originally hail from Taguluan, Misamis Oriental, and taking nursing as a course and as a profession is something that's unplanned. I never expected to land in this career, because when I was young, I never really entertained the thought of being in a course that's medically related. I was always poised by my family to take up law and become a lawyer. And in fact, I was already in my 3rd year in preparatory law school when I decided to shift to nursing. And that was quite a disappointment, I know, for my dad.
What made you shift?
My mom was in the States when I was in 1st year, and she was telling me a lot of good things about nurses, how nurses are working well and spending the best of their lives in their profession here in the US at that time. And I was still close-minded at that time until a documentary in one of the channels in the Philippines had featured the lives of the nurses in the States. And that's when I started contemplating about, moving to, shifting to nursing. And probably because the preparatory law school that I had was not really like an exciting course. I got so bored, so I tried nursing, and here I am. I'm now a nurse.
And I'm sure your dad was very proud of you now.
Yeah, I graduated. My graduation day in college was his birthday.
Oh, wow. So that's a great birthday gift.
Yes. So even though he was no longer, he already passed away that time. But I think I still gave him a good birthday gift.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure he was smiling down on you. And so I see we have a ton of people that are watching today. Please put into the chat what your name is and where you're watching from. And if you have any questions for Michael and Rommel. And Michael and Rommel, so you kind of came to nursing from different backgrounds, but tell us about your journey just before you landed in the US, because I know you both have very different experiences. So I think it's interesting for people to hear, and very different to you, Miss Jean, also, because I know your story. Tell us about your experience of coming to the US.
Go ahead.
Okay, go first. Okay. It's difficult for me. I was working back then, as I've mentioned, in a pharmaceutical company. So I'm working in a corporate world, and then I have to go back to clinicals. And somehow being a physical therapist helped me as well. For some of them, memory works. Whatever knowledge I had, I brought in from physical therapy helped me. But what was difficult for me was the clinicals, because it's totally different. We don't do bedside as a physical therapy. We only do clinics, right? So the adjustment was really, I should say, petrifying for me. I was so scared going into clinics and doing my duties. The best part, and I think what helped me, as I've mentioned a while back, was having doctor friends as my classmates. There were 111 of us in that class, but on my group, because we were grouped like into 10, and we do the rounds, we do all the clinicals in group by groups. So there was 8, I think, if not 10 in our group. I was the only physical therapy graduate / RN, and the 9 or the 8 of them are medical doctors. So it's easier for them to do bedside. But what helped me is their knowledge, because they were teaching me, basically 9 people were teaching me with my clinicals on top of the clinical instructors that I had. But the adjustment really was very, very difficult for me, because I was still working in the morning, and then they would my clinical instructor would be calling me at nights to do all those clinical duties. So at night, I would be very, very, I should say, I wasn't really in the right mindset, because my mind is at work, and then I would be doing clinicals. So the adjustment was difficult. I have to give 120% of my energy. I wasn't sleeping well. And then on top of these clinical duties that I had, we were already prepping for the national exams, and we're actually reviewing for the CGF&S. So, but the school that I had for RN was really, really good, because they were they were like 100 steps ahead of us. Like, we were doing the clinicals, but on weekends we are reviewing already for the national boards. And on Mondays, there are people coming in from the national universities, like the biggest universities in Manila, and they were reviewing us already for CGF&S and for the NCLEX type of exam. So I think that helped us, because they really wanted the 111 of us in the class to pass and to really get good scores in the national exams, because we are like we're the test class. They need to make sure that we were in that top, on the top portion, or on the top percentile of the national average in terms of the national boards. For them to show to the nursing board locally in the Philippines that this is a good program. So it was difficult for me, because I was working and doing the clinicals and reviewing all at the same time. But again, what made my life easier is because I have doctor friends on my group helping me. But it was really interesting. But while all of this thing is happening, what's in my mind really is, I should be doing this, because I wanted to go to the US, in New York particularly. I think what helped me to have that determination as well is that I have a partner in New York at that time who was also pushing me to finish it. And I think that helped me as well. So we had a good objective. I have good determination. I have good support group, being my group mates are all doctors and they're helping me. I had a good school because they wanted to, to show the Philippine board that they have a good program. So it was really like I fitted in to the program, and everything that's happening helped.
Wow, Rommel. So that was
Yeah.
a lot of work, a lot of sacrifices, but with the
True.
determination and the support, you were able to get there, which is, which is what everybody wants. Michael, what was your journey like?
I would like to apologize in advance. This is not going to be a brief answer, as my story is a little bit unusual, unorthodox compared to other nurses who came here. Well, of course, Rommel has his story as well. So as I've said, I've graduated nursing in 2008, and then took and passed NCLEX in 2010, and spent around like 5 years in the Philippines, working mainly in review centers, conducting review classes for the Philippine Nurse Licensure Exam and NCLEX. And I also work as a staff nurse in one of the hospitals in Cagayan de Oro. And because of my utmost desire to really land a good career in the US, I placed my resume in online job posting sites. And finally, in 2014, I signed a contract with one of the agencies for EB3. And you know how EB3 works, it takes years, even a decade for some to wait. So in 2015, I got another opportunity. Another agency offered me to work in Northern Mariana Islands in Saipan, which is a U.S. territory. It was a work visa. So I asked the permission of that petitioner of EB3 if I can go and grab this opportunity, and they said yes. It's not going to be a conflict of interest. So I did. I did fly to Saipan in January of 2016 without knowing that that's gonna be the start of a quite wobbly nursing career of mine. I did not expect that we would arrive there without a salary. And processing papers, especially if you're coming from Mindanao, going back and forth to Manila, you would really incur, debts, because you have to pay for plane tickets and hotel stays. So my concern that time is how I'm gonna pay my credit card in the Philippines, and I always do pay on time. So it took around 2 months for those salary irregularities. But what really transpired or happened in Northern Mariana that made me think of a different path was that at that time the entire island was struggling to accommodate all foreign worker visas, to renew their visas, that mine was not renewed. My application did not meet the deadline as mandated by USCIS, that I had to be repatriated back home 5 months after my arrival in Saipan. And I haven't recovered yet financially at that time. But luckily, I was able to go back in August, 2 months after, in Saipan to work again, but this time already in their hospital. And they gave me a good reassurance that, hey, even though you applied to us part-time, we will be able to process your papers and readjust you to make you full-time working with us. And so I did. In fact, when the consul interviewed me at the U.S. Embassy, she saw the contract that it was just part-time, and she was raising her eyebrows. I gave her the explanation as what was explained to me by the human resources at that hospital. But so she did approve my visa, only to find out when I arrived in Saipan, 3 months after my arrival, I was told by the HR that they did apologize that they're having the same problem, that they have to send. I'm gonna be one of the first batches of nurses or workers in that hospital that had to be sent home and with the same problem. And another thing, my part-time was not readjusted to full-time. So in those months that I was working there, I was not earning enough because I was only working part-time. And so another agency went to Saipan to campaign for EB2. And I think a lot of you guys know about EB2. And so nurses there got enticed about EB2, but it's not free. You have to pay for the processing, and it's a lot. An immigration lawyer here in the US offered me his services for a much cheaper rate. And so some friends expressed their support on me, and I finally made the decision to give it a try and let go of the EB3, which I must admit, it wasn't a good decision. But I took the risk because I wasn't prepared to go back and again home and backtrack. I didn't have an assurance again if I could find a job in the Philippines or what. And so my EB2 got approved initially. I was able to fly to Texas and move in a home health, working in a home health in Texas. When I arrived there in May of 2017, I was happy because there were many Filipinos working. I felt there was, there is that sense of belongingness. And then a few months after, I started hearing horrifying stories. These nurses were well-experienced nurses and were very stable working in Saudi Arabia. And they moved to the US. I heard that their entry was tourist. And it's fine. But the thing is, they were asked to start to work, even if their documents were not yet completed. Some of them did start working without social security number. So for those of you who are still in the Philippines, you will soon know how important and how essential it is for somebody to have an SSN in order for him to work legally here in the US. And another thing I heard that there were some of them are saying that they are declared to receive this amount as their salary, but in real life, they only had this much. And they were struggling because they have family, trying to sustain their needs here in the US. But I didn't want to meddle. I don't want to intrude to their concerns. I just had to focus on my own, thinking I was okay. And then 8 months after my arrival in the US, in Texas at that time, around January of 2018, I was wondering why there was no update yet with my EB2. So, and in fact, I had to resort asking the help of is it a congressman or senator in Texas at that time. And February of 2018, 2 guys knocked at my apartment's door. And they introduced themselves as special agents, investigators from the Criminal Fraud Investigation Department. Okay, so I let them in, and they informed me that this lawyer that is processing my papers and this home health agency that I was working with were under investigations for some irregularities, misrepresentations in some of the documents that these Filipino nurses that they're processing with. So I just gave them information of what I know and on my end too. And they invited me to be a witness to appear in court. And I was sent in a city where I had to appear in court, all government expense paid, and only to find out that I was not allowed to testify because at that time I was still working in that home health, and the lawyer from the prosecution panel told me that it's going to be a conflict of interest because they're from the prosecution panel and I was still working with these people that they're investigating with. And sadly, I was told by these agents that, you know what, Mike, your green card is still within reach. You can still have it, but we advise you have to look for another petitioner. And you know what? In those times, my family was not aware in the Philippines what I was going through. It was very devastating because I jumped to EB2, I gave up EB3, and now it was like a dead end. And it even took me like driving to as far as McAllen, which is like a border between Texas, between US and Mexico, just to find another employer. And here in the US, human resources in hospitals do not seem to have much knowledge in how to process papers for foreign workers. They don't know the dirty job. It has always been the agencies who have the expertise to do that. And it's always like money talks. So I got so tired. I was getting broke and I already have a car. I had to pay all these bills here in the US and I already resigned from my job. I spent sleepless nights until I just decided to give up and go home in the Philippines in May of 2018. And at that time when my family, especially my mom is 79 years old already right now. It's so sad. It broke my heart seeing my mom disappointed because I think it's always our goal to give them, to be a feather in their cap. But at that time, I was disappointed. I did regret that why did I have to jump to EB2? But I knew in my mind I didn't do anything wrong. But it just so happened that I fell into these wrong people. 2 months in the Philippines, jobless. I was contemplating and trying to refigure my career. I didn't know nobody, like almost my friends had no idea that I was already in the Philippines because they were thinking I was having a good life in the US. And God moves in mysterious ways. And at that time, I did try to talk to my EB3 petitioner, but I understood they were already disappointed. No interest to continue processing my papers. But in August of 2018, I received an email from them expressing their interest to pursue my petition. And their legal department did talk to me and had to understand what happened to me in the US. And they gladly told me, you're fine. We can continue processing your EB3. And I had my interview in the US Embassy, more than determined, more than eager to make things right in March 12 of 2019. And of course, the consul saw that I went to Saipan, moved to the US, and was like, okay. And accidentally, I was not able to update my DS-260. And she was like, these were not reflected in your DS-260, but I'm going to give you some chance to correct them after this interview. So I was not approved right away. I got 221G. So for those of you who are in the Philippines who are still in 221G, do not lose hope. That was March 12. My birthday is March 23. When I went out from the US Embassy, I knew I think there's going to be a miracle that will happen before my birthday. So checking my status in SEAC, like the website, it was administrative processing from March 12. And then March 22 was my last hope because it was Friday, the last working day before my birthday, which happened to be on a Saturday that year. I did check my SAYAC status on Friday, March 22 in the afternoon. And yes, the status was updated from administrative processing to visa issued. And as what they say in the Philippines, ma, ihanda ang lechon. That's what I told my mom to celebrate my birthday. And I got back here in the US in May of 2019. And the following month, I received something in my mail. I just knew what was the content of that mail. But because of the very devastating experiences that I had to went through, I couldn't hold the envelope. I was sweating really bad. I was having this anxiety. But when I finally opened that it was my green card, it was indeed tears of joy. And it was actually a reminder that there is hope if you just have faith in God. So now I'm here. I'm having a good time with my career here in the United States as a psychiatric nurse.
Michael, I know Ronald shared the hardships that he experienced, but your journey and your experience is just, it's heartbreaking. I mean, the devastation, the feeling of hopelessness, like it's never going to happen, the determination to try and try and try. I mean, I think where is it? Hayes was saying, kudos to you, Michael, for your perseverance and patience. God is good, really. And I really want to thank Miss Jean for bringing Michael's story to the Lefora talk show. Jean, do you want to share why you wanted Michael to share his story? Because, you know, different guests bring different backgrounds. Rommel has a different experience, but I think Michael bringing in his experience is really important to share. Why did you want Michael to share?
Yeah, I think last week Michael told me that he has a different story. He has so there is something that was like a very extraordinary one. So I told him, just take a video and just send it to me. And then later on, I realized that would take time. So I told him, oh, okay, call me. I was at work that time, and he told me everything. So yeah, I know there is something that's going on for the past years. I even posted one of those. There was one post, and there are a lot of nurses who has complained about that that something is going on, not really a good one. So I realized that the story of Michael has to be told in Lefora, because there are still a lot of nurses who are still coming here, and they might be trapped like what happened to Michael. So I did agree. And I guess he also told you that story before this time.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
And I really want to just commend Michael for having the courage and the bravery to share his story, because, you know, I think it was, I can actually cry, because I think it was just, you know, it's a story of hope and miracle at the end, but the roller coaster and the emotion, I think, you know, we can all just feel that as you were going through it, Michael. And you know, I'm so grateful to Ms. Jean for introducing us, because I think it really is a cautionary tale for everybody to hear your story. As Rommel knows, the experience is hard enough if you haven't experienced those additional burdens. But, you know, to have gone through what you go through, if we can just help educate one nurse out there, you know, to be careful of, you know, who you trust, and make sure that it's a reputable company, and, you know, and you know, please, you know, watch the Kinetics YouTube page. You will see why EB2 can be a very difficult visa for nurses. So, you know, to educate yourself about the process. I really just, you know, commend you, Michael, for sharing your story and for sharing the hope, because you're here today. You're here today to tell the tale, and you are a beacon of hope for so many people. As you say, so many people get that 221G, not even experiencing what you've experienced, but just knowing that it can come right. So never give up, and really kudos to you. Kudos to you. So the journey for both Rommel and Michael has been really tough in different ways. Can you share with us, Michael and Rommel, like when you came to America, what it was like in the beginning, what you experienced in terms of the technology, the culture shock? Can you share your experiences and the differences clinically in that regard?
Yeah. Okay. I would like to add on how I got my immigrant visa, because I think I missed that part. So I was done doing all my exams, my IELTS, my CGFNS. I had my NCLEX passed in 2005. So I'm ready. I've sent all my documents. So my partner found the agency in New York, and they've got all the requirements. I'm ready. I can fly anytime. And in fact, we were contemplating, because I wanted to parallel on Michael's story on some of the stories, the nurses that I met in New York when I came in. So one option for us is for me to go as a tourist in New York. And at that time in 2005, there's a real gap in the number of nurses working. So they need more nurses, in fact, in 2005. But I have a really good job, not to brag, but I had a really good corporate job in the Philippines. And I think this is the negative side of my objective, why I wanted to go to New York, is just to be with my partner. Of course, I need the job. I need a good job, and that's to work as an RN in New York to earn money. But in my heart, I think I wasn't ready. And I will discuss later why I wasn't ready. So I wanted to go as a tourist in New York and work right away, right? In 2005, the visa cap as an RN for an immigrant visa in the Philippines was reached. And in fact, that visa cap actually, I think, is saturated since 2003, if not 2004. So there are really no visas that can be granted to any RN in the Philippines at that time, in 2005. So that was part of the difficulty. The agency in New York petitioned me for a green card, but there's no visa available for me. So that's why we were contemplating of me moving as a tourist. And there are a lot of nurses in New York when it came in. I mean, came in that are on tourist visa, and they're working. And I was thinking, how come? But I'll tell you the story later. So I was waiting in the Philippines in 2005. I'm ready to go, but I don't have any visa. So I have to wait. I resigned from my work when I was taking all the exam, and they learned that I can't get any visa. And they were saying, because I have a really good company and friends and manager, and they were saying, oh, you can't go to the US yet, right? So come back. Anyway, it's just a waiting game now. Like, if they can give you a visa, then leave. But if you want to work with us again, come back and work. So that's what I did while waiting for my visa. And it took me 3 years. The green card came in 2008. So that was a long waiting. And I think a lot of nurses can relate to this, that you're ready, you satisfied all of the requirement, but wait, I don't have any visa. You can't give me any visa? What's wrong with that? I know they need more nurses. Why can't you not? But that's part of waiting. That's part of the rules of the game. So for me, if I can advise the nurses in the Philippines, if you're just waiting for the visa, relax, wait. Because if I went to New York with a tourist visa, then it's going to be a lot of problem eventually. And I think that's, I'm luckily enough, I didn't pursue that. Luckily enough, because I saw a lot of nurses working. I think that's being illegal, right? You're in a tourist visa, but you're working.
100%.
And somehow some of agencies in New York is just so illegal. They can do things. Um,
Michael.
that's bad, I know. And so when I went there, just to give everyone listening a hint, or at least perspective, me working with my green card versus other nurses illegally working, or even some nurses having like the working visa, um, psychologically and mentally it's different. Because I want to tell you that being in New York is again totally different adjustment period. On my first year in New York, I was adjusting. It wasn't easy. Um, and there's a lot of factor. One, my personal relationship. Two, my support group. I don't have any friends except for my partner. But he's not my friend. He's my partner. Three, I'm a corporate person who has an RN license, educated, but I don't have good clinical experience. So again, I'm adjusting on that factor. And third, this is a new city. Although I would say I'm working in Makati in Metro Manila, it's the best city in the Philippines. But New York is New York. It's a different ball game. In the Philippines, I'm working in a corporate world. I'm a manager, and I feel like I'm more superior than anybody else. That was my mindset. I know it was wrong at that time. But in New York, you're a third kind of person as a citizen, right? You're not even a citizen. You just have your green card. Luckily for me, when I moved in 2008, I had a green card. So that's less worry for me somehow because I know I'm working legally and I'm not thinking about any visa problem at all. I just need to satisfy the 5 years waiting time so I can apply for my citizenship. But New York is multicultural. You have a lot of different persona in the staff working in the organization or in the facility you're working in. And I felt like, oh, this is just like what that was me thinking. Oh, I think working in this facility is just working like in a corporate world, not thinking that it's a different ball game. Um, Culturally, I'm not a real New Yorker. Second of all, I'm a third kind of person. At least I'm not black, I'm not white. I'm Asian. I look very young. Some of some of the some of the supervisors in the facility was telling me because I look really young back then. Um, they were saying, "Really, you have an RN license? Where did you graduate? You still seem like you're a teener. Did you really finish college?" That kind of thing. I know it was bad of them to say that, and I know they're not rubbing it in. It's just culturally they can say things that would hurt you. That culturally it's not acceptable for you being a Filipino. I know they're not racist. In New York, it's multicultural, as I've said, and in fact, eventually I came to realize that uh, these people are welcoming. These people are culturally savvy because they've they're in contact and they're working with different kind of nationality and culture. So it was just me because I'm adjusting to the culture, and it was a culture shock because this is not how I thought it would be like. So you're adjusting on your work, you're adjusting in the social cultural environment. I wasn't really clinically um, I don't have the good clinical background and experience being a worker in a corporate world. The technology, because my my clinical experience was in the north part of the Philippines. It's not even in Metro Manila. It's not even in Makati Med or St. Luke's, which are the best hospitals in the Philippines, and not even Asian. So I was also adjusting with the system. Um, but I think like in any other workplace or any other environment, you need to find your support group. Again, it's going back to who can help you, who can give you advices, who are the person you need to trust, right? Um, Adjustment is a big thing and a big deal in New York. But eventually, you will realize that I come to realize that New York is a good city to come into, because it's multicultural, and actually, um, the adjustment period for me was over a year, I believe. But once I got adjusted and I got entrenched into working in the facility and in that environment, it was eventually easier for me. They're more welcoming because there are a lot of nationalities working. You have Indians coming in. Um, there are African American people. Most of the RNs are, like, I think any other states, are Asian, are Filipinos. So, but you, again, trusting the Filipinos in the environment is tricky. So you need to find who your real friends are. Not everyone is your friend, and I think learning fast is a must. You need to ask more questions. You need to take down notes again. It's like relearning. And I've forgotten everything what I've learned from the Philippines. I know this is a new ball game. This is a new learning. You need to just learn really fast. So that's how I came to get adjusted in the working environment in New York.
Yeah. Well, I think coming to New York, as you say, it's multicultural. So there's a big benefit to that. It's very typical for nurses to take at least a year to settle and adjust because there's so many big differences. And I think it's also, as you said, coming on your own, Rommel, can be really difficult because, you know, I know, Michael, you also came on your own, and Jean, you came with your family, right? So maybe you could share, you know, just how, because I think each situation has kind of pros and cons, good and bad. If you come on your own, you only have to worry about yourself and adjusting yourself, but you alone. And as Rob says, you've got to, you know, find your support system. And Jean, when you come with a family, it's more comforting because you've got your family, but at the same time, there's more factors, you know, you've got to settle spouse and kids and all of that kind of thing. Michael, how was it for you when you came and you adjusted? Because you were also on your own.
When I came back in the US in May 2019, it felt like first time again. Even though I was already here, I used to work in Texas, but Texas is warmer. Texas is more of a Spanish version of America. So moving to the Midwest, in Illinois was totally a different experience. It was cold summer. No, it was cold spring evening that I arrived here, but I was still trying to absorb everything because as I've said, I did not expect that I would still be given another chance to continue my American dream. But I was so inspired to start. And like Romel, he's living in New York City. I live in a small town, a small city here in Illinois. Life is quite laid back. And so coming here, still an adjustment because when I was still working in home health, the system, the workflow in home health is way much different when you're really working in a hospital. And modesty aside, I work in one of the magnet hospitals in the US where everything has to be in place and organized. And so that was quite an adjustment. So for those of you who are still in the Philippines, here in America, I know most of the hospitals in the Philippines are still like paper-based, paper and pen charting. Everything is in paper, metal plates charting and all those. Here in the US, it's more simple because everything is computerized. But the beauty about it is that I have more time to really focus on my patients, attend to their needs, and you really get the action, the real action of applying those theories in real practice and relating those that you see in real practice in the things that you have learned in books. So and then plus when I was working, my first exposure in the Philippines was working in a pediatric unit in a government hospital with a maximum of like 120 patients in one floor, with only like 6 nurses working to cater everybody. So here in the US, I think my max is just like 6 to 7 patients. So you become more efficient because you're used to how it is working in a quite horrible setup in the Philippines, almost like a circus in the Philippines. But it's also like a struggle here in the US because you have to adjust, like withdrawing medications. It's computerized. I'm not sure if we're allowed to. It's like Omnicell. So yep, technology. You get the advantage, the feeling, the experience of taking care of your patients with state-of-the-art facilities, and that's what America is all about. When we were in college, we were taught by the ideals based on the practices in the U.S. And in the floor, I work with dominantly white people. I guess that's a Midwest thing. You rarely see other races here, but I'm very I'm happy that they're very welcoming to me. They have accommodated me well and made sure that I have a good that I wouldn't have a difficulty in my transition here in America in the clinical setup. So yep.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for sharing. Jean, can you share how different it was for you coming with a family? For those people who are watching. And if anybody has any questions, please put them into the chat, because I see we have a lot of people watching us today. If you have any specific questions for Michael or Rommel or Miss Jean, please put them into the chat and I'd be happy to answer that. Jean, do you want to share how different it was coming with a family?
For me, because I was already married when I was in the Philippines, I was already married. So when I came here, I have to bring my family and my 3-year-old daughter. So it would be very difficult if you will come here alone, because I myself, I don't know how to cook. It's my husband who cooks. So if I will be coming here alone, who's gonna take care of me? So, and I am very fortunate that my agency has sponsored, not really sponsored, but they gave us a loan for the plane ticket. So everything that for me is free. So the plane ticket is free, the visa. So for them, I have to pay for their visa, the fee bill, which is, I don't know, it was $345 right now. Back then, yeah. But the plane ticket, they give us a loan, and it was deducted to my salary every month. So I was very lucky that they have given me that opportunity to have a loan from them. So that was a very good one that they have supported us too.
Okay. So that's what I say. They're pros and cons. Coming with a family can be wonderful, because otherwise poor Miss Jean would have starved. But it also can be more difficult, because sometimes you have to find, the kids don't settle right away, or the spouse needs to find a job, and so either way there's a big adjustment.
Yeah. So if you have little girls, if you have little children and you don't have, like, if you are a single mom coming here, it will be difficult for you because you have to get a child care. So if you have a husband who's not a nurse, then he's gonna take care of your children, and that would be a good thing that somebody is coming here with you.
Yeah. Well, let me add on that note. Coming here as a single, of course, again, there's an advantage. I mean, you own your money, you own your time. But at the same time, you have to, bear with if you're so stressed at work, if there's like an emotional turmoil at work, you come home alone, you sleep alone, eat alone, and just talk to everybody at home virtually. So, but I think, but at least I could just imagine for those who move here in America in 1990s, 80s without Facebook, without social media, how difficult it was to bear the loneliness here in America. At least now we have technology to bring us closer to our loved ones. So I don't think it's really like for the single ones, good news, we have technology. It's not going to be as lonely as probably it was for those who came here in the past decades.
And
To add on,
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Ron.
to add on Michael's comment about adjusting emotionally, if I could turn back time and I had the option to choose on which season I would move to New York, I should have chosen summer or at least spring, because I moved in winter time, like October, November, and it was difficult adjusting to a gloomy, foggy New York, and you're starting to adjust to your work as well. It's difficult. So, as an advice, if you have the option for nurses in the Philippines who want to move, if you have an option to choose on what season, choose spring or summer, because it has an effect. I believe it has an effect. At least you have 6 months or at least 3 months of adjustment in a sunny weather, like in the Philippines, before you get bombarded with a cold, dark environment.
It's good advice, Rommel. The thing, though, is with many nurses, they have 6 months to enter the country. And also with the pandemic right now, it can be difficult because you've got to kind of balance, resignation periods and travel bans and, all kinds of things. So, I think it's good advice, but not always possible. So talking about New York and Illinois, many nurses in, the Philippines or all over the world don't really realize how big America is and how different it is in the different states. So we've asked Michael and Rommel to share, and Miss Jean, you can chime in about Texas. I know you have already, but you chime in as well to tell us. So we want to know, Rommel, we want to know, Michael, tell us about the cost of living, the taxes, the housing costs, the transportation, what you know about schooling, what's attractions in the state, the weather, anything that you think somebody would need to know, or what you wish you knew before you came about the particular state you're living in.
Right. Okay, I would start by saying at least you nurses moving to the U.S. should know that there are salary parity in different states, right? So you should know how much rate does an RN working in New York is, the amount is, versus RN working in California, because there is a difference in rate. Yeah. And in New York, I didn't know about that.
Don't realize.
Yeah, I didn't know about that. And in New York, it's very expensive. The cost of living is expensive, except for food. But the accommodation, if you rent for a room or a studio, being a single person at that time when I moved in, would cost me around $700 or $800. That is in 2008, and that's a lot of money. Because of what's going on in this pandemic, I think that the rates lower down. But if you're renting a room at the 900 or 1,200, that's good enough. But it's very expensive, because I've learned from some of my friends in different states that they're only renting 500 or 600 for a room. So there's a difference in room rates. If you're a family, I've learned.
Sorry to interrupt, Roland. And just to clarify for everybody, you're in New York City, right? You're not in upstate New York or something. So if you want to maybe speak about that difference of the apartments and the rents, like how upstate New York might be different from New York City.
Right. So it's very expensive if you're in the city. It's more expensive. That's why some of my friends are actually living out of the city. You can live in Queens or in Brooklyn or in Bronx, but most of the Filipinos actually is in Queens or in Brooklyn. So in Queens, it's a lot cheaper. I don't think it's that much, but a difference of 100 or 200. But if you're saving or if you're sending money to the Philippines, that would be 5,000 pesos or 10,000 pesos in the Philippines, and it's a big amount of money as a difference for the rate of your accommodation. So accommodation is expensive. The food is not, because there are Asian restaurants, there are Asian groceries. So the food in New York, I've learned, is not expensive. It's a good price. Um, the the transportation is very good. So you don't need to buy any car, because the buses, the trains is there when you go out in the streets. So it's easier, it's convenient. That would save you money, because an MTA card, which you will use for the train ride or for the buses, if you buy a month, or like how do you call that again? Like you can use it for the whole month.
This,
Um,
for the season.
Unlimited, the
Yeah.
unlimited card. It's like 100 now. When I started, it's just in 100, but now for 1 month, I think it's 128, I believe, or 130. So you can use it every day, any time of the day for the whole month. So that's your budget for your transportation. On a weekend, this is tricky because you want to go out, right? But there are trains, there are Amtrak. You don't really need a car, I believe, in New York. Unlike in any other states, it's a must for them, because there's the buses come in every hour by the hour, so it's difficult. Um, but the lifestyle in New York, I think, if you're not careful, is very expensive. If you watch, but now that's Broadway is closed, right? But before, if you love Broadways, you need to budget at least 150 for a weekend watching Broadways, because you're paying for 100. There are cheaper tickets like 45, 65, but the standard is 100 something. Plus, you need to go to dinner right after or before the show. Um, if you love movies, there are a lot of cinemas anywhere, any part of New York. Um, AMC Stubs is very good, because you only need to pay you only need to pay $15, and you can watch any movie for the whole month, right? Um, but New York, I've learned, is a city where you have the sea, you have the mountain, you have the forest, and you have the city. So I really love that, and I don't think I would move out, because I have everything in New York. So a weekend you can, in summers you can go kayaking, you can be in the sea. You can if you love mountains, the mountain is just there an hour. You take Amtrak or go to Long Island, and you have the sea and the mountain. But if you really love the city lifestyle, New York is the best state you can have. The restaurants is everywhere. Um, if you don't have food because you live alone, you just go out. The restaurant is all over. You can buy, if you love Philippine food. You just go to 74th Street. The Filipino restaurant is all over there. And in fact, in some places in Queens, some of the Filipino restaurants are popping out. So I feel like it's very comfortable in New York, and I think that's what you want to weigh in if you really want to look into your budget versus your salary. I should say I'm not leaving New York anytime soon, just because of the convenience and because of my lifestyle as well. So, but I know a lot of people who are homey or want the countryside. Then I don't think New York is for you. Um, when I was starting on my first year, um, I want to say I'm an introvert person, so I want to stay at home. I'm not really going to parties like most of my um, age are. So they're into bars. Friday, Thursday night, they're already going out, even though they have scheduled work the following day. I can't do that. But I think it's my personality as well. And I think anyone can relate to that. That once in a month, I think you really want to go out, be in the city, just hang out, be in a coffee shop or be in a bar, and that's very convenient if you're in New York. If you want to go shopping, most of the Filipinos love shopping, right? So in an hour, you'll be in outlet. So you can go upstate, or you can go to Tangiers Mall in Long Island, or you just cross the river and you'll be in New Jersey in a factory outlet. So again, so shopping would be cheaper if you do that, and it's very convenient in New York. IKEA in Queens now has just recently opened, so IKEA is already available in Queens, and that's in almost like a suburb. But IKEA in Manhattan, um, we go there before with my friends if we want to buy anything for our accommodation. And yeah, I think New York is very, very,
Lo-
I should say, yeah, single people would love New York. I
Lots
think
to
so.
see and lots to do, always something exciting happening, right?
Right.
And I'm sure it's very different, Michael, for you in Illinois. What is it like in Illinois?
Oh my God. If I mean, knowing Romel's story, well, New York City, no doubt why it's called Big Apple, but here in the city where I live, there's not much to see, and I'm thankful that for people like me who loves to save, this is definitely the place to be. Um, um, However, Illinois is definitely one of those states with a lot of snow. So if you enjoy the cold, this is the state for you. This is the place for you. But for me, no. And taxes here in Illinois is probably quite friendly. Property taxes is way more expensive compared to other states like Texas. In this two-bedroom apartment that I'm renting, it's almost like equivalent to the one that I had in Texas, which was and also one of the major cities in Texas as well. So a two-bedroom apartment like this in a small city in Illinois is already like $950 per month. So for me, still I could afford it without hurting much with my salary because I'm sharing this apartment with another nurse who comes from Cebu. But speaking about her, she came here in the States with not much knowledge, didn't even know how to drive, didn't know how to cook. Good thing for me, I know how to cook. Cooking is my passion. So like Romel, he lives in New York where everything is convenient. You just go out and buy and go to your favorite restaurant. Here, you rarely see those. If there are, it's mostly Americans. So if you're into Filipino foods, we only have one Asian market here. So for her, it was a struggle. So I just could not imagine how happy she was when I finally cooked in the kitchen and she saw rice. Because if you do not know how to cook in America, especially if you're in a state like this, where like all American city, you would end up eating everything deep fried. So but yes, it's a quite it's unlike New York. The contrast here is that you live in a peaceful environment. For summer, spring, you love the entire place to be so pretty and green. But in winter like this, the place is so dismal, very gloomy, and if you're prone to depression, you could really have it. But yes, life in America is very diverse. There are many options to choose from. If you do not like the state that you're working with, just comply with the contract and start prefiguring your plan after it. If you want to move to other states, whatever fits for you. If you love like Romel, who's into partying, city vibes, probably big cities like New York. I'm 3 hours away from Chicago, so if I want city life and shop, I have to drive 3 hours away from here. But yep, you really have. If you're in a place like where I am right now, driving is a must. So for those who are still in the Philippines, you better learn how to drive, because when you're here, you have to do everything on your own, and it would be very expensive if you would have Uber every day. It's a very practical car here. It's not a luxury; it's a necessity. So you have to really learn how to drive, especially winter. It's really very difficult to drive with snow, and also learn how to cook, learn how to be independent before you move to the States, because here we don't have mates.
Okay. Well, that was very good advice. I think, Michael, that you gave there just about the transportation and, doing everything for yourself. And Jean, I know that I think you lived in a cold climate when you first came and then moved to Texas, right?
Yes, I was in Michigan for 7 years, and then I transferred here in Texas. So yeah, the thing that I don't like in Michigan is the winter season, because when you go out, you have to like your undershirt. I think you have to have 4 layers before you go out, so that you won't be so freezing and cold outside. So that's the reason why I moved here in Texas.
In Texas, okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. This has been so informative. Before we finish off, I thought if you want to maybe just share a little bit about COVID. I know that the last year has been so difficult for so many nurses. It's been so stressful. Many nurses have been very emotionally and physically depleted and exhausted. But I think this new year has started with hope and optimism. So I wonder if you just want to take like 2 minutes, just 2 seconds, and just finish off, because we over time, but I didn't want to stop everyone because we were having such a great discussion. But just share a little bit about what your experience has been with COVID in the area, in the location where you are right now, what you're seeing right now.
In New York, in the area where I am right now, which is Queens, I've learned that the number of cases actually went down already. We were cringing like in January, and we were afraid that it would go up because of the holidays, those the New Year's Day, the Christmas Day. But unfortunately enough, the cases then went up. And I think we have a steady, and actually we don't have that much cases anymore. So we're happy to tell everyone in New York, at least somehow, we don't know if that's herd immunity, and all of the frontliners actually has been, I mean, not all, but those who got vaccinated already. So they were saying 10% of the population in there got vaccinated, and we were waiting for everyone to get vaccinated mid of 2021. They were saying that's low enough, but there's just no available vaccines anymore. So there are a lot of vaccination centers that have been opened up, and you can schedule and come in, but they just can't give you any more schedule because there's no vaccines. Mm-hmm. Well, at least that's what's happening in New York right now.
Okay.
I don't know with Indiana.
Well, good to hear that the cases are going down, and then the vaccinations hopefully will be speeding up. Michael, how about in Illinois, where you are?
Yes, just like New York, here in Illinois, we have started to observe a downtrend in COVID cases, I think 3 weeks ago. And in fact, in behavioral health floor, we had to open a COVID floor for psych patients last year. But just this week, we had to close it because I think there were no more cases. And we are hoping that it will continue that way. So vaccination-wise, I think, how do you call that? Economic frontliners like restaurants or the food handlers are already currently being catered for vaccination. Good. So good. We are hoping that this will continue not only within the United States, but globally, so that all of us who have been dying to go home will be able to do it this year.
Yeah. Hopefully. Ms. Jean, what about Texas? You're in San Antonio, right?
Yeah, I'm in San Antonio. I think our cases has already gone down also, and then we don't have a lot of cases in the hospitals. We only have, I think, 1 or 2 floors that are a COVID floor. Previously, it was like all the med-surg floors are COVID floors. Yeah, and I think some of the 65 years old in those uh, were already vaccinated. So, and the frontliners, the medical health, the health workers were already vaccinated. In my hospital too, we have like almost like 90% are already vaccinated, unless those nurses who doesn't want to take the COVID vaccine, and they have the right to opt for that.
Okay, yeah. And I live in California, in San Diego, California. So the same trend is what we're seeing right here. So hopefully this new year started on a note of hope and positive optimism. And hopefully things are just going to get better and better. But I really want to thank Rommel and Michael and Ms. Jean for joining us this morning. It was such an informative, interesting discussion. And that's what the Lefora talk show is. It's just nurses helping nurses. Coming to America is, you know, the American dream is still very much alive. For those of you who have not yet passed your NCLEX, who have not yet passed your IELTS, please do so. The visa bulletin is current, so now is the time. There's huge needs. We're seeing that every day, more and more hospitals and nursing homes looking for international nurses. So now is the time to take action and have the same determination and perseverance that Rommel, Michael, and Jean has shown, because it's not an easy journey, as we know, and poor Michael really experienced more ups and downs than most. But the good news is he's here to tell the tale, as is Rommel and Miss Jean, and there's a lot of good news and a lot of good things to come in the future. So thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who's watching. We'll be back next month with 2 new guests. And if anybody has any questions, please post them into the chat, because Michael and Rommel have agreed that they will go in and answer any specific questions that anybody has afterwards. Thank you, everybody. And again, thank you, the Lefora admin team. You are amazing. You do so much for so many nurses, and we're just so grateful for your support and your care. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe. Bye-bye.